This episode of Beyond Reality Radio was recorded December 22nd, 2016. And welcome, everyone. It is Beyond Reality Radio. Jason Hawes, J.V. Johnson, ready to do the final show before the Christmas weekend, Jay. It's the
final show, and it's crazy, man. And well, this weekend we got Christmas, and then next weekend we got New Year's, and so it's like 2 holidays back to back. Boom, done.
Yeah, and I love them both, so I'm good with it. I'm happy with it.
You know, most of the time we can't remember New Year's.
Well, I actually have a little trouble remembering one specific New Year, that one that we spent at the Spalding Inn up in New Hampshire.
yeah. And then, welcome to the show, welcome to the show, everybody. And we got a great show planned tonight.
Yeah, we do.
We're going to be talking to Tom Interval. He's a magician and also a Houdini expert. And I am the furthest thing from an expert on Houdini, so this should be interesting.
Yeah, well, you know, Tom has been practicing magic since he was a little kid. Actually, the age of 6, he started, and he's performed throughout many of the casinos and television shows, and he's very, very well known for his act and his tricks. And we're anxious to talk to him about that. But he also owns a virtual Houdini museum online, a website, and he has a lot of great information about Harry Houdini, who, as anybody who is involved in magic, kind of looks to Harry Houdini as the patron saint of magicians. And I find Houdini fascinating for 2 reasons. One, his tricks were just pretty awe-inspiring, but even more importantly, he was a master at self-promotion. He knew how to get a crowd, get them excited, make them on the edge of their seat or standing on the edge of a riverbank watching him underwater. I mean, he knew how to perform. He was the ultimate performer and promoter. Well,
and he came from nothing, and he was able to create, just a huge enterprise, and just the things he did. It was amazing. So, of course, he had to get the word out, and especially back then, I mean, they didn't have the media we have today, or social media, or anything like that, to let everybody know where you're going to be, what you're going to be doing.
Yeah, there was no electronic media back then at all. I mean, radio was in its infancy during part of Houdini's career, but really there was no electronic or broadcast media. Everything had to be done in print or just kind of riding through the streets yelling. I mean, it was kind of the town crier kind of thing. And with those limitations, he was actually able to be very, very successful, and that's pretty cool.
So thanks for tuning in, and if you're listening on any of the great stations we air on, feel free to also head over and like the Facebook page at facebook.com/BeyondRealityRadio. And also you can head over to beyondrealityradio.com, click on the Listen Live button. You can either listen right online, right on the website, and join the interactive live chat room where JV and I spend a lot of time. Or just join the chat room. You can still listen on the radio, whatever you want to do.
Yeah, and the other thing we want to mention is that while we take phone calls throughout the entire show, we don't always get them right on, depending on how the conversation's going with our guest. But we are going to kind of open up the phone lines toward the end of the show and allow people to call in and wish friends, family, fellow chat members, each other, whatever, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays things. We really want to have a little Christmas spirit toward the end of the show. How's that sound?
Yeah, and we got a little surprises planned.
Yeah, we do. We do. Got a little cool little thing. Our phone number is 844-687-7669. Although tonight is the last show of this week, we've got some great stuff coming up. Monday will be a best of pre-recorded show, so it's the day after Christmas, kind of still unwinding from the Christmas holiday. But Tuesday, we've got a long-anticipated guest joining us, L.A. Marzulli.
Yeah, and L.A. is an author, lecturer, filmmaker, and he's very well. He talks a lot on the Nephilim trilogy, and which we've talked about in the past with Scotty Roberts and some other people, and it's a really interesting thing. And L.A. gets really into depth, and he's so well known on it too.
Yeah, he's a supernaturalist who's lectured on the subjects of UFOs, the Nephilim, ancient prophetic texts, and he's got a lot of research and a lot of information to back up his discussion. He's also talked a lot about the hunt for extraterrestrial life, ancient artifacts that have been found throughout the world. So it's going to be a fascinating discussion with L.A.
And then Wednesday, the clairvoyant gourmet. I'm not sure what that means, how it comes together, but it sounds interesting and really interesting.
Well, she talks about chakras, right? Chakras are energy sources in the human body that we can't see or touch. And there are 7, according to Janie, there are 7 main chakras within the body that are thought to be the wheels of physical, spiritual, and emotional energy. They're located in the same places for both men and women, right down the center of the body, starting at the base of our spine and going right up to the top of our head. So we're going to talk about those energy centers with Jeannie and how to keep them aligned and keep them full of energy, health, and it helps us balance our lives. So we'll see what she has to say.
And then Thursday, we're going to be talking with Ronnie Dawson. He's an oil field worker that had an amazing UFO alien encounter in north central Texas in 2010. And continues to this exact time, correct? He's still having these experiences.
Yeah, he has an ebook entitled "The Ronnie Dawson UFO Story," available through Barnes and Noble and other places. And he says that in 2010, a high-powered laser was fired. He fired a high-powered laser at a UFO in an attempt to better understand the craft's propulsion system. And a few days later, the ETs retaliated by invading his home.
Wait, a high-powered laser?
I'm assuming it wasn't a weapon. It was just one of those
like
lights, I guess.
Laser pointers?
I suppose. I'm not sure. I mean, he'll have to tell us.
Like I've got the star pointers, the ones that light up green. And you can
those
see
are
from
cool. Those are really cool. But we'll find out all about Ronnie Dawson's story next Thursday. Now, let's see. Friday night's the 30th, so New Year's Eve is Saturday night of next week, and then obviously New Year's Day is Sunday. Then you and I, did we decide we're gonna be live on Monday or not? I think we
got to figure
right?
it out. We're gonna try to be live on that's what the
Monday.
2nd, right?
Right. Yes.
So yeah, because after that, JV and I will be at the CES in Las Vegas. I'm a special speaker for FLIR thermal imaging. So we'll be out there for that, and I guess it's the biggest consumer electronics.
It basically
convention.
Occupies all of Las Vegas. It is huge.
It really does. Yeah. I mean, the hotel rooms are insane. Thank God we don't have to pay for them, because usually you can get a hotel room there for $100, $150. What are they, $700 a night?
You and I were looking at rooms and just to kind of get a sense of what was going on there. And you look at that week, and it's like $29, $29 in certain places. Then it goes to $700. When the CES starts. So
I mean,
it's crazy.
Yeah, it's so expensive that JV, you got to sleep in the bathtub in my room.
Whatever it takes, man. I'm good with that. Let the water
I'll
run.
give you an extra pillow. It'll be warm water until the hot water tank runs out.
So don't forget, later in the program, we really want to open up the phone lines to Christmas greetings and Christmas messages of goodwill and cheer. So maybe you might want to script it out if you've got something special you want to say. We'll welcome those calls. But in the meantime, if there's something else you want to talk about, it's 844-687-7669. And I know that you had something you wanted to talk about.
Well, yeah, honestly, there's a lot of scariness going on over towards Italy right now. Have you heard about the supervolcano that's starting to become active again?
All I know is that how many years ago, hundreds of years ago, that Vesuvius erupted and buried Pompeii, and those folks didn't know it was coming, and they were basically frozen in place by the ash and the lava, and it's one of the most unbelievable events in human history. That's all I know about the area and volcanoes.
Okay, well, that's pretty good, though. The supervolcano that caused one of the biggest eruptions in history has started to stir again. All right, it's dangerously close to hitting a critical pressure point. A 12-kilometer wide cauldron that forms a vast supervolcano on the coast of Italy is showing signs of reawakening after almost 500 years of inactivity. 500 years. Not only is the site rumored to be responsible for the extinction of the Neanderthals, Jim.
Wow.
It's got over 500,000 people living right around it, and researchers say it appears to be approaching a critical pressure point that'll lead to an eruption.
Well, and the scary thing about that, obviously, if it's an eruption, the type that Pompeii saw, it was abrupt, and it was so massive that there was no time to react. And even with scientific warnings at this point, 500,000 people can't get out of the way of that kind of eruption.
Oh no, especially when everybody tries to leave all at once, and it just gridlocks themselves.
And have you ever seen Italians drive? I have. I've driven in Italy many times.
I have,
it's not a pretty sight.
No, but supervolcanoes are extensive fields of volcanic activity formed when a volcano ejects so much magma from its center that it collapses in on itself, leaving behind a vast crater and a landscape that's pretty much littered with geysers, hydrothermal activity, and sulfuric acid. Since this one's formation, it's Campi Florigia, I believe it's called. Mm-hmm. It's had only two major eruptions, 35,000 years ago and 12,000 years ago, and the smaller eruption that occurred in 1538, but when you say it's a smaller eruption, it's really relative, because the 1538 eruption lasted for 8 days and spewed so much material into the surrounding area that it formed a new mountain.
Wow.
So, yeah. And,
I think one of the things that I think maybe one of the most recent major eruptions was the Mount St. Helens eruption. But that wasn't in a very populated area, thankfully. And I don't think we've, at least in many, many generations, have had that kind of major catastrophe where there's been a major volcanic eruption in a fairly populated area. And there are several populated areas that are located around volcanic activity.
Well, yeah, and that one you're talking about, wasn't that just like, 5-6 years ago?
Well, I think the original major eruption was longer ago, but there was a secondary eruption. I think you're right.
Yeah,
like 5 years ago.
I remember because Jane Stein, R.L. Stein's wife, we were talking back and forth, and we were in Florida, and she was stuck in England. She couldn't get back to New York City, and she was stuck there for multiple days because they couldn't take off.
Right.
But yeah, so this whole thing, the whole site that's a concern, the eruption that occurred 200,000 years ago is thought to have just been so bad that it triggered a volcanic winter, and that ultimately led to the extinctions of the Neanderthals. Italy has now raised its supervolcano alert from level green to yellow. So
it's from level green to mamma
it's
mia.
Like,
right?
oh crap! Everybody keep an open eye. Sleep with one eye open.
Well, that's not the only thing we need to be worried about these days, because there's a Christmas solar storm that's battering the Earth as a major solar flare blasts from a massive hole in the sun. It's heading our way. It's actually already started to affect us, but Earth is being blasted by a flare soaring from a hole in the sun's atmosphere, and it's bringing huge geomagnetic storms with it. The superfast stream of solar winds actually hit the Earth's magnetic field just in time for the winter solstice yesterday, and it's whipped up a moderately strong geomagnetic storm that could last for several days, according to the U.S.'s National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration.
Now, does it seem that we need to look out with electronics?
Yeah, what they're saying is obviously these storms...
Because I just got the new iPhone 7 and I bought the insurance, so I just want to make sure that I'm covered.
That was a good move. These storms are known for creating the northern lights, which is a natural occurring phenomenon in the northern hemisphere. But they can prove much more devastating to humans, especially as it relates to technology. They wreak havoc on navigation systems, cause entire national power grids to grind to a halt if they're strong enough. And this was actually strong enough, or it may be strong enough, that President Barack Obama was forced to issue a warning to the nation. And he said extreme space weather events, those that could significantly degrade critical infrastructure, could disable large portions of the electrical power grid, resulting in cascading failures that would affect key services such as water supply, healthcare, and transportation. So it's enough of a concern that...
Which is pretty much all things that are, that you need in jeopardy. Yeah. Well, that seem in jeopardy on a daily basis anyways. Yeah.
And the storm is expected to remain... affecting Earth for several days, which means including through Christmas. But the good news is if you're watching for the Northern Lights, you're going to see a lot of great colors.
Just try not to use a camera because it probably won't work.
Right. Don't rely on a camera. Don't rely on anything electronic.
Make sure you're drawing a picture.
So, coming up in just a little bit, we've got our guest, Tom Interval. There was one more thing that I wanted to mention because I thought this was kind of an odd story, but there's a restaurant owner in Florida who is looking for the owner of something that was left in his restaurant. And it happens to be the cremated remains of this particular person's mother.
And how do you just leave that?
I don't know, but it's the guy that owns the restaurant, Alan Gochel. The restaurant's called DeBerry Diner. Said his cook found a small tin case that was left behind Sunday morning. He thought it was drugs or something, but when he looked at it, it actually has a label on it. It says "Mom's ashes." So. Somebody left some of their mother's ashes in a diner.
I hate to laugh
in Florida.
I know. It's like, what do you? Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah. So they have posted it on Facebook. We're doing our part here to pass the message along because it has to mean something to somebody. It's obviously very important, very precious, so they wouldn't have carried it along with them inside this case. So if you know somebody who's looking for their mother's ashes, check the diner in Florida.
And that guy, did he possibly snort a line or two before he read, he read the name
realized,
of the can?
Yeah, I hope he didn't. That would just be wrong.
What was that movie with Robert Downey Jr. and that other guy? The guy drives me crazy. Zach, whatever it is, Galifianakis.
Yeah, whatever. Right. Yeah.
Where Robert Downey was trying to get back, and well, he had his father's the guy Zach had the father's ashes in the can, and one guy thought it was coffee and put it in the coffee maker. So it was so bad.
Yeah. I do remember the movie. What was the name of it? Do you remember?
I don't remember. Due Date or something like that.
You and I haven't been particularly great at remembering these movies' titles when we start talking about them.
It's getting old. We're getting too old.
I don't spend a lot of time watching those. I got a few favorites.
Neither do I. I only watch it when I'm breezing through if the wife's watching something and I'm in the room.
Speaking of watching stuff, was there a new Walking Dead on Sunday night?
No, it's off until February.
And the same thing.
Finale.
Same thing with the Curse of Oak Island, right?
I don't know. Okay. I think that one's still on. Okay. I just watched the last episode, which now they're digging a second hole in that area.
I haven't seen that one yet. Okay.
It's driving me crazy. I feel like it's just dragging and dragging. They're just trying to get this whole season out of it with nothing.
Yeah. Well, that's I know that it's costing them millions of dollars to dig these holes. So I don't know.
But you got to wonder also, though, when it comes down to that, it's like when we go out filming and we're doing the show Ghost Hunters, if there's something, if we have to head to Missouri to do a case, well, then if they're going to film it, then I charge it to them. They're going to pay for the travel for the team and everything to get us out there. So it makes you wonder, though, with these guys on the Curse of Oak Island, how much is History Channel really kicking in to do this stuff? Is them digging these holes really costing them, or is it costing the History Channel, which again is making millions off of each episode that it airs due to commercials?
Yeah, you know what's funny about that, though, and you and I talked about it. There was a period before, I don't know, early in the spring, I think it was, we were talking about it, where they were uncertain whether they were going to renew the series. So, I mean, it seems like a great show on the History Channel. I really enjoy it. I know you enjoy it, but it must be only mildly successful. They wouldn't have, been so indecisive about renewing it, I think. I mean, or maybe it was a ploy. I don't know.
Yeah, a lot of times that comes down to, first off, the amount, if the station, if the network actually owns the show, and if they do, well, then the cost factor that it's coming into, all right, how much are they paying the people who are co-starring on it, each person, contract negotiations. And if they don't own it, it's between them and a production company. How much is the production company trying to charge them to make each episode, and are they feeling that it's worth it when they sell their ads? So there's a lot of behind the scenes negotiations that go in that can be a real headache. But
all right, so I have to ask, and I know the answer to this question, but I know people ask in chat all the time, and I'm sure people are wondering and thinking about it, Jay. But as we enter the last week here of 2016, any idea when you're going to be able to start talking about the next phase of what's happening on television here?
In 2017. Well, there's a lot of different stuff coming up. And also, Jim, I've got some other offers to do some different things. So we're looking at different avenues. The thing is, I would love to keep Ghost Hunters going. I want to, but if so, we need to change it up a bit. We need to spice it up. Ghost Hunters has created so many spin-offs and so many ripoffs of the show that now it's just been done, and nobody's changing it up. Everybody's just regurgitating the same stuff. We need something fresh. We need something new. We need to bring it back and just do it in something that's really gonna bring everybody back to it. So, all
right, so let's take a quick phone call before we have to go to break here. This is our good friend Matt. Matt, welcome to Beyond Reality Radio. Great to have you on the show.
Hey guys, how's it going again?
Great.
Good. Welcome to the show.
Just wanted to say, I think on behalf of everybody that listens to the show, that this year I think everybody's grateful for you guys putting this all together. You, Jay, Alex, Eddie, everybody, and we really appreciate it, and we hope you have a great and happy New Year.
Oh, well, that means a lot to us. Thank you. And we love doing this show. And that's why we're looking forward to next month. We're going to be syndicated on a ton more stations. So And we just love the idea of being able to reach so many more people, and still being able to listen online if you want, but also being able to listen on a radio station in your area. I think that's just going to be huge. But thank you so much, and we love doing it. And we love the support and the response from everybody.
Yeah, and like it just gives us like the 2 hours a day to kind of, relax and get to hear some pretty funky stuff
and have fun. That's the main thing. And have some fun and do it in a lively, enjoyable manner where we can joke and poke fun at each other and ourselves and the subject. Hey,
Matt, thanks so much for the call. We have to take a break. When we come back, we'll bring our guest in, Tom Interval. We'll be talking about his career as a magician. Plus, we're going to talk about Harry Houdini and his career as a magician. It's Beyond Reality Radio with Jason and JV. Hey gang, Scaricon might be over for this year, but there's another Scaricon in the works. You owe it to yourself to check out the details. Go to Scaricon.com. That's Scaricon.com. Sign up for the email list and be informed. You need to know what's going on with Scaricon because it's the best weekend of the year. Scaricon includes celebrities, fans, vendors, parties, panel discussions, film premieres, and so much more. It's a weekend you'll never forget, and everyone is welcome. Visit the website, Scaricon.com. That's Scaricon.com. Nothing like sweet dreams. Beyond Reality Radio, Jason and JV. And again, thanks to Matt for those kind words. We appreciate that. Like we said, we're going to open up phone lines later in the program as well for people who want to call and wish each other Merry Christmas or just, general Christmas greetings.
And we do want to wish everybody out there just a happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and just enjoy the family time and, spend it, just spend it enjoying everybody. I think that's the most important.
Absolutely. I agree with that 100%.
All right. Well, we'll be right back after this with our guest, Tom Interval. You listen to Jason and JV.
And we're very, very happy to be here tonight. It's Beyond Reality Radio with Jason Hawes and JV Johnson. Our telephone number is 844-687-7669. And just a reminder, Monday's show, it will be a best of pre-recorded show. Tuesday's L.A. Marzulli. That'll be our next live show. But tonight, Jay, we're going to be talking about a couple different things. We're going to be talking about Tom Interval's career as a magician and his knowledge and information about Harry Houdini, who is probably the most famous magician, certainly the most famous escape artist of all time.
And I don't know enough about Houdini, so it's interesting to have him on because it's a subject that's interested me, but I've never really looked into it. So I guess I'll be learning a lot tonight.
All right, so let's go to our guest line and bring Tom in. Tom, welcome to Beyond Reality Radio. It's great to have you on the show.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks for coming on, Tom.
Tom, before we get too deep into any of this stuff, tell us a little bit about yourself. I know you started with an interest in magic about when you were 6 years old, but tell us the story and let us know how you got into this.
That's correct. Do you guys know who the magician Marshall Brodeen is? Does that sound familiar?
Not to me, no. Jim?
No, it doesn't.
Okay, well, in the early 1970s, probably about 72, I guess I was 6 or 7 years old, and I saw this guy, this magician, on television. He was performing a trick, pitching a deck of cards called TV Magic cards. And his name is Marshall Brodeen, or was Marshall Brodeen. And I saw him do this.
Tom, let me just ask you, did you say he was selling them, these TV Magic cards?
He was actually selling them on television.
It was like an infomercial?
Like an infomercial that you'd see.
I remember those.
Like an early days infomercial.
I remember those. I absolutely do, yes.
And he did these impossible things. He'd say, have someone pick a card, and he showed the ace of spades. And he puts it in the middle of the deck. Tap the deck, the ace of spades jumps to the top. He puts it back in the middle, jumps to the top again. He keeps doing all these incredible things. Then he riffles the deck. All the cards change to the ace of spades. So that was one of the first things I saw, and I thought, oh, my God, I can't believe you can do that with a deck of cards. Because I used to like to play with playing cards, but at that point, I couldn't believe what you could do with a deck of cards. And then my parents saw how interested I was in magic. And then, over the years, the next couple of years, they got me some magic tricks from places like his company, from Marshall Brodeen TV Magic Company, and Johnson Smith. You guys might be familiar with that company. And that's how it all started. They got me a few mail order tricks, and then they got me a magic set or two, and I just practiced. So that was the origin of my interest in magic. And then, of course, Harry Houdini played a part in that as well.
Good, Jim.
Yeah, did you ever end up getting those that TV Magic cards? Did you ever own those?
Yes, but my parents never got them for me.
Did they end up?
I had to buy them myself.
Did they end up working as shown on TV?
Well, it's interesting you say that. In the early days, when I first got them, I learned a lot right then and there. When you buy a magic trick, whether you get it online, well, these days online, but when you get a magic trick, it looks really, really good, right? Whether you're looking at it on television or whether you go into a magic shop. Because generally these guys are pitchmen, and they're really experts at what they're doing. They're selling it, and they're also good performers, generally really fast, slick talkers. And then you see this impossible feat, and then when you buy it, you bring it home, you see the instructions, which I can invariably say 80% of the time the instructions are written horribly, so it's really, really hard to follow along, especially when you're a kid. So to answer your question, yeah, I could kind of get through it because I won't reveal any secrets, but the concept of the cards was relatively simple, and I figured it out almost on my own. But yeah, they had a couple of different routines you can do.
Didn't the cards?
So that's interesting you mentioned.
Yeah, didn't the cards? I had a deck, and I'm not sure if it was that deck or not when I was a kid. And it seemed like the cards, like every other card, was an ace of spades or something, and that was the trick. If you kind of ruffled them one way, it looked like it was all ace of spades, and if you did it the other way, it was the other cards. Is that was that part of this deck?
I plead the Fifth Amendment.
Nice.
if it deals with any magic secrets, I can't really talk about it.
Fair enough.
But yeah, I mean, but it was you might remember, as a kid. Did either of you do magic besides that as children?
I never did magic. I was always the guy always trying to pay attention to their hands as they're doing it because of the sleight of hands, and so that was I was ruining everybody's magic tricks. Nobody liked me.
You're one of those.
I am one of those. And the funny thing is, well, one of my co-stars, Dave Tango, was a magician, and so he used to come. I used to have him come over, and he'd be he lived with me for a long time, and during the kids' birthday parties, he'd be performing and stuff, and he would always make me leave the room because he would watch me as I'm watching his hands as he's doing the tricks, and he's like, Jay, you can't do this crap. He goes, I lose focus because I know you're watching my hands. So, but I'm one of those people. Sorry.
Yeah, hey Tom, I had a couple trick decks as a kid, and I used to dabble with it. I used to think, I thought it was pretty cool. I never became proficient in any of it. There were a few tricks that I would do over and over again and make my family sit through them, but that was about it. Nothing more complicated.
Yeah, it's funny. Well, you mentioned that too because when I was a kid, I showed my parents and my siblings, mostly my mother. I just bombarded her with magic tricks because as I got them, and one of the things I also did was I read tons of magic books after going to the library, and you could learn a lot. In fact, now I recommend to my magic students to read magic books because they can get so much more out of books instead of having to spend more money on fewer tricks. You learn all these tricks in one good book. You might find like 10 or 15 good tricks. So I used to practice, and I used to show my mother, and I used to pester everyone I knew. Throughout school, I used to, always show people tricks, and that's one of the only ways you get better. Once you perfect the magic by yourself in front of a mirror, then once you feel proficient enough, you start performing it for, quote, real people, as they call it in our magic circle. And then once, people start giving you feedback, if something's not looking right, believe me, they'll tell you. And, if it's not funny or if it's not entertaining or interesting, because that's the main thing, magic has to be interesting, obviously, and amazing. So yeah, it's a really interesting learning curve. But my parents suffered, and anyone around me suffered.
Well, now with it, I know Penn and Teller were doing a show not too long ago, and I think it might still be on, where Fool Us or whatever it was, where magicians would get up and they'd have to perform and do their trick, and so is it something like that, especially when you're dealing with the Brotherhood of Magicians? I mean, is it something like that where they're critiquing everything you do to make sure you're getting things professionally done?
Yeah, people who know you, they tend to be a little more critical, but they generally aren't that critical. The people who might be a little more critical would be magicians. As a child, as a lot of children, we join magic clubs, so we can hang out with, fellow magicians and learn from them. And when you perform, it's a really good experience because you're performing in front of magicians who know technically how to do the tricks. So they're a little more critical, I'd say. But the main thing in magic is, and again, I tell my students this, is that you have to focus on the presentation and your own personality more than the actual trick itself. Because anyone can go into a magic shop and purchase a trick and read the horrible instructions.
Yeah,
and
but
then,
how do you sell it?
Yeah, you've got to sell it. It's like anything, you've got to entertain it. Even if it's not funny, at least make it interesting. And so that's the thing I teach. So really, it's not really about the Penn and Teller show is awesome. Don't get me wrong. I like it. I've seen about 4 or 5 episodes, and I think it's really cool. And also, Penn and Teller don't even reveal that much when they just basically say, they use in-house terminology to the magician, him or herself, and so they don't reveal anything to the general public. So that's good. But yeah, the main thing is it's not about the tricks. It's always about the entertainer. And of course, magic is unique. It's a unique form of entertainment because obviously, dancers don't have to fool people with tricks. Singers, they just sing and they don't have to fool anyone. So there is obviously an element of mystery and secrecy. And I fully believe in people and magicians having to keep that secret. But at the same time, some people get so caught up in that, the method, that they actually forget, you're supposed to entertain the audience. You're supposed to have fun and just relax.
Yeah, I understand that.
So if you had to assign percentages, how much of a successful magician's show is actual tricks and magic, and how much of it is actually more of a performance in an entertainment or comedic or showman sense?
Well, it depends on the magician. There are a class of magicians known as finger flickers. Those are the guys or gals who love to do sleight of hand and do the sleight of hand for the purposes of it feeling good. Oh, this is cool. Look at all these cool fancy card flourishes I can do. And I love card flourishes like that too. But they kind of well, anyway, I don't want to digress. The point is, to answer your question, percentage-wise, I'd say 60 or 70% of magicians are more focused on the method, and then the other percentage, maybe 40%, would be focused more on the entertainment value. But the thing is, if you think about the most famous magicians in history, and I'm talking about Harry Blackstone Jr., David Copperfield, Paul Daniels in the UK, guys like that, if you look at their performances, it's always about some sort of original twist, not on necessarily the method, but on the way they present it. David Copperfield's thing was to do these beautiful vignettes, romantic vignettes, in his early days, in the 1970s. He would do a play, basically, a vignette to the magic tricks. That's what made him unique. Harry Blackstone Jr., that guy, he was a classicist. His father, of course, was a famous magician as well. But Harry had, oh my God, he not only had that incredible voice, he had that commanding presence. He could manipulate the attention of the audience like no one I've ever known. He was one of my childhood heroes. And so, and then Paul Daniels, that guy, he was awesome. He was funny as hell. He and the thing about humor, by the way, and I'm not going to get into this too much because I don't want to reveal too much, but magicians can use their personalities. They can use jokes and one-liners to kind of divert attention as well. So it's not just about physical misdirection, it's also about psychological misdirection. And that's all I'll say on that topic.
Right, that's fair.
I don't want to reveal too much, but that's the key is if you look at any famous magician, they always have something unique to offer, and it usually involves the way they entertain. It's the angle they approach it from.
Right. We're talking with Tom Interval, a magician. He's also a Houdini historian. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we'll continue our conversation. Our telephone number is 844-687-7669. It's Beyond Reality Radio with Jason and JV. Hey gang, it's JV from Beyond Reality Radio, reminding you that TAPS Paramagazine is the official publication of the TAPS organization. That's right, if you're interested in the paranormal, you need to subscribe to TAPS Paramagazine, and now is your chance to do it at a special rate. And the best news is that TAPS Paramagazine has been completely redesigned and relaunched to serve you better. That's right, go to the website, it's tapsparamag.com. That's tapsparamag.com. Click on the subscribe now button. Enter the promo code BEYOND at checkout and save even more on your subscription. It's Taps Para Magazine, where every issue is filled with the latest information regarding the paranormal community, whether it's TV, whether it's radio, or whether it's happening in your neighborhood. It's Taps Para Magazine. Again, go to the website, tapsparamag.com. That's tapsparamag.com. Use the promo code BEYOND to save. Welcome back to Beyond Reality Radio with Jason and JV. Our guest tonight is Tom Interval. We're talking about his career as a magician, plus we're going to be talking about Harry Houdini. This is going to be a particularly short segment because Jason and I have something special we want to end the hour with, kind of a Christmas thing that we would like to feature. So we only have a few minutes here, Tom, but I did want to ask you about, at what point in your life did you decide to take your interest in magic and make it more of a career and a profession?
Well, my background is in professional writing. I have a degree in professional writing from LaRoche College in Pittsburgh. That's where I was born and grew up. And so my first experience in professional magic was in Busch Gardens. It's a theme park in Williamsburg, Virginia. And I would do, between 5 and 7 shows every day. I was actually kind of an actor as well because you had to dress up in medieval attire and, perform sleight of hand for the guests. So that was my beginning. And then I worked in the corporate world after going to college full time. I worked in the corporate world for about 12 years total at 2 different companies. And a layoff kind of forced me to look for another job at the time. And all that time I've been doing magic. I've been teaching it. I've never stopped performing. I was a semi-professional. But then once I was laid off and I couldn't find a job, this was around 2009 and 10 when the economy was really bad. And so then I thought, you know what, I'm just going to start up my own business again out here in San Diego. I moved here after I was laid off. I thought it might be a little easier to perform out here, as well as, the weather is nicer too. So.
I've heard that, yeah. So yeah. What do you think about, we're going to be talking about Houdini in a little bit. When we start our next hour, we'll have a nice long segment to do that. But what do you think about changing times and what that does to people's perceptions? And I mean, you can't turn on a movie or a television show without seeing massive CGI and these effects that just make everything so surreal. Does simple magic, sleight of hand stuff still have the impact it used to?
I believe it does. I do think that what you said does affect live performances. I think a lot of people, they're not used to seeing a magician do close-up magic live. So most people haven't seen that. So when they do, the impact is just as strong as it always has been. And, even back in Houdini's time, a lot of the things, technology was improving back then too. And, as vaudeville was around from like 1880s to somewhere in the 1930s. And, movie houses took over and vaudeville died as well. And, that still didn't actually reduce the impact of live performances. I mean, it reduced the number of venues magicians could perform, I guess, at that point. But, now in the modern age, magic has experienced a resurgence. And so technology, I think, might enhance some magicians' performances. And I don't find that to be real ethical. In other words, some magicians who perform on TV might use editing techniques instead of actually doing something they could do live. But other than that, I mean, I think that, people aren't, I don't know, the word is not jaded, but people still are impressed by live magicians in particular. I think that they're a little more suspicious when they see a magician on television. But, when they see it live, they still can't believe it. And I think that's why, performers like David Blaine have done so well in terms of his magic. Like the close-up magic has more impact, I think, than stage magic. Whether it's, especially if it's live. Even if you see a magician live on the stage, it's really cool. But you're like, well, I'm kind of far away. He could be doing something crazy with those boxes that I'm not aware of. But when someone sees magic close up, sleight of hand at a wedding, for example, they see a magician going from table to table and they see him do this impossible stuff with cards, coins, and other small objects doing his craft called close-up magic. Especially if the magic happens in their hands, then no, I don't think the impact is lost at all.
No, that makes a lot of sense. All right, we're going to have to go to a break, Tom. Thanks for hanging on for us here. This is going to be a little longer break than usual because Jason and I have a special Christmas feature that we want to throw up here for everybody's hopeful enjoyment, and that's the idea, right?
Yeah, but we got a lot of questions when we come back, but so thanks for hanging on. All right, you ready for this, JV?
Yeah, it's Beyond Reality Radio, Jason and JV. 'Twas 3 nights before Christmas when all through the show the mood was quite strange. Why, we don't know. The guest was on target without any prattle, and people were listening from Boston to Seattle.
The talk was all light, but we did have some fear.
What would we find under the tree this year? Did you behave? I asked Jason with glee.
As much as you did, my good friend JV. At first we were chatting without much concern, until we had the first vision of many more we would learn. The visitor was clad in a fancy robe and hat, and some might see he was a tiny bit fat.
He said he was here to offer some aid, and with great elan some warnings he made. He said, hold on tight, this might get rocky. And then he offered his name. He said,
I'm Focky. I've had 3 visions that I needed to share. The first is that Jason will never grow hair. The second is more serious, and it may sound dumb, but JV will always have use of his thumb. The third is a message of great import. It's not the kind of info that you should retort. My visions have told me that soon you will find 2 more visitors of the spiritual kind.
And with that pronouncement, this Focky did leave, and Jason and I were grateful for the reprieve. But just when it seemed things would be quiet, another visitor appeared and created a riot.
This man was crude and had an odor of booze, and in between words, he often did snooze.
Yeah, my name is Duncan, and I've been charged with a task. I just needed to make sure I still have my flask. The words I will say may seem a bit rough. Yeah, but I'm hoping that you both can be tough. Well, the greatest gift you can find this season is right in front of you. With this, you can reason.
Then out of his mouth, as out the door he strode, he said,
Don't light a match near me, for I will surely explode.
That left us wondering, both scratching our head. What was this gift referenced in the words he had said?
And before we could blink, another vision we saw. This one was friendly, but not very tall.
You know me as Eddie. Slick to be precise.
And my name is Alex. You both have been nice. Your gift is amazing, beautiful, and glistening.
It's the gift of the love of everyone who is listening.
And with those words, we both sure did realize that we were indeed receiving a prize.
For it's all of you out there who tune in each night
that make it all worthwhile, rewarding, and right.
So to each and every one of our listeners directly from us,
we wish the most happy of seasons
and a Merry, Merry Christmas.
And welcome back to the show, Beyond Reality Radio. Jason Hawes, JV Johnson. Our phone number is 844-687-7669. And we hope you enjoyed our little Christmas message. And we're gonna replay that at the end of the show, Jay, for anybody who missed it.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun making it, and it goes out to all of you. Without your support, the show wouldn't be where it is. It wouldn't be nationally syndicated. It wouldn't be in a month from now jumping on another 50 to 150 channels. And, it's because of you all, and we greatly appreciate that.
We do. We say Merry Christmas from our hearts, and a big thank you goes along with that. Just a quick reminder, Monday night's show will be a pre-recorded best of show. Tuesday, we'll have L.A. Marzulli on talking about his work. We'll be talking about the Nephilim, UFOs, a whole bunch of things with L.A. And then we're going to really go into some uncharted territory here with Janie Boyce Claire.
Talking about, the clairvoyant gourmet.
Yeah.
So this is going to be interesting, where chakras are energy, and what food sources actually will enhance those and strengthen you in that way. And so it's going to be really a topic that I don't think either of us are familiar with. So I think it's going to be interesting. But right now we're talking with Tom Interval, who refuses to tell us his magic tricks and how to figure them out.
There is a code,
That's right.
Tom. There is a code that exists. I mean, is it something that you have to swear to when you join one of these magician groups? You're a member of several. I mean, is it something that's actually written and that you have to swear to? I mean, how does this work?
Yes, it is in their bylaws. It's true. My opinion is that they don't really enforce it a lot, because you'll see magic exposure going on. Famous magicians expose stuff, but you never see them kicked out of the organizations. But I mean, if like the Masked Magician, I don't know if you guys have heard of him, but he was exposing magic. I think it was back in the 90s or 2000s. I can't remember now. But now that guy, everyone wanted to basically pan him. But yeah, there's a code of ethics, and that code includes, the basic premise of not revealing the secret. And if you do, the theory is that you'll be kicked out of the magic organizations.
Well, the one you're talking about, the Masked Magician, was doing it was on Fox, I believe, and it was just about 7-8 years ago or something that he was on, and he was revealing all these tricks throughout the night. That's right. Yeah, and I know one of his things was he had to stay masked, because if not, his life was in jeopardy for showing how these tricks were done.
I could see all I could see all these magicians showing up at his house and throwing those cards. You know how they throw those cards are like weapons, and just assaulting him with that, right? Yeah. I mean, I could see it now.
Especially in that movie Now You See Me. I mean, that kid was cutting through things, and it was amazing.
I hope they didn't read the Ricky Jay book, because he actually wrote a book by that title, Cards as Weapons.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I swear to you, it shows how to throw playing cards.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean, secrets are a very big are an important part of the magic. But as I said earlier, the main thing is the presentation. But I obviously don't agree with, guys like the Masked Magician. I think that, part of the fun of magic is not only if a magician's funny, that's one thing, but a magician also has to be amazing.
Right.
So you want to amaze people and entertain them. And I completely disagree with magicians who want to reveal a secret. Now, that sometimes raises the question, well, if a magician has to keep a secret, how do people learn magic? And the way, that's an exception, because magic, if you see someone who's really interested in magic and they want to perform it, if someone comes up to me and says, oh man, that was an awesome card trick, could you teach me that so I can show my friends? In that case, I'll reveal the trick and teach it to them, and teach them the different presentational aspects as well, because they're not simply curiosity seekers. So the difference is someone is sincerely interested in learning, and then the other person just wants to learn because they're curious. And you get that a lot. You always get people asking you how things are done. And generally, the standard answer is, if they said, how did you do that? The standard answer is very well, thank you, but not very funny, but it kind of gets you out of that situation.
No, but I do agree with you. The presentation means everything. As a guy, I get up on stage just like you. The only difference is when I get up on stage, I'm usually in front of an audience of anywhere from 2,000 to 6,000 people, and I'm up there talking about the paranormal. And because we investigate, believing over 80% of all claims can be debunked, and we get up there and we do this 2-hour-long presentation. And it's the most important is keeping everybody interested and awake. And I've seen so many presentations out there where, really, I'll be honest, they don't have people skills. They're boring as hell. And people are just getting up and leaving. During our presentation, we're getting people to laugh. We're interacting. We're showing behind the scenes funny footage and everything. And people love it. And I think that's the most important, is when you can really interact with the people, and just the way you put the presentation together is going to make people keep coming to your show, or just really learn and want to be there because they enjoy it.
Exactly. They come to see you, not necessarily what you're talking about. The subject matter is very important, but they come to see you as well to be entertained. So, and in your particular profession, it must be kind of difficult, because I'm sure you get your share of hecklers, or they tell you certain things are BS or whatever. So you probably
have to deal with. No, Tom, that's usually me. I'm usually the heckler.
Well, honestly, I think we've been lucky enough where I've probably had 2 hecklers throughout the 10, 12 years that I've been up on stage.
Oh, wow. Good.
And the fact of the matter is, it's because when you're heckling me, I'm going into most cases believing 80% of all claims can be disproved. So what are you going to heckle me on? I mean, I'm already saying that I believe over 80% of the claims can be disproved.
Okay, that's true. Yeah,
And the fact of the matter is, so and it's one of those things. I'll argue with anybody about it, but so most people tend to leave us alone and head off and do their own thing. But so we luck out with that. It's not like we're going in saying everything's paranormal. This is a ghost. Everything's a ghost. Everything I show you here is going to be proof of a ghost. That's not the way it is. So we play it smart that way.
So Tom, let's. I want to ask you about something because we've had a lot of other guests on the program, and there are a lot of people out and about who claim to be able to do some pretty incredible things. These mentalists who say they can bend spoons and they can move objects with their minds. Have you ever encountered any of these folks? And what's your take on them? Is there anything legitimate about any of that? Or is this going to reveal something you shouldn't reveal?
No, that's what I was sort of banging around in my head. Like, a guy by the name of Uri Geller, I'm sure you've heard of him.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In the 1970s, he is a magician, and of course James Randi, the magician, had shown that he was deceiving the public. So there's a very fine line because when you're a mentalists they get work because. I don't want to seem like I have a bias toward mentalism, but in many aspects, mentalism is more amazing than a straight magic act. And the reason for that, when someone sees a mentalist, it's like, wait, maybe what he did, came out of real powers. Because most mentalists who are really good at what they do, like Banachek, have you guys heard of Banachek?
I have heard of him.
He's awesome. And, guys like him and others, they do their mental acts and they're not using bright boxes and they're not using assistants in bikinis and, usually there's no music in the act. Even the ones who are entertaining and funny, they still are, I think, in many ways more amazing than a lot of magicians because they focus more on some of the psychological aspects. So, but when they cross the line and they know they're doing magic, and then they claim that their powers are real, that's obviously where I have a problem with it. Regardless of anyone's belief system, I just don't think it's ethical of someone doing mental magic to present what they're doing as real when, in fact, they know that it's not.
Yeah, it's definitely a good point. And Yuri's been shot down so many different times, whether it's manipulating the spoon, or I know they sell spoons that have weaker metal at that point that just the heat from your hand can make it bend. So
to put in the work, yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So when you and we're going to change the topic to Houdini in just a minute here, but when you're talking to somebody or teaching somebody, I heard you say earlier that you do instruction. Do you look at somebody and say these are the skills you need to start with? You got to be at this point before you're actually be able to do any of this stuff. And if so, what types of skills do you look for in a person to be able to pull off some of this stuff?
Well, first of all, yes, there are certain types of skills they have to have when they come to me. In this day and age, when you have YouTube, you can learn a lot of magic tricks on YouTube. And I always recommend that they don't do that because people who are teaching magic on YouTube, sometimes they're 12 years old and they themselves don't even know how to perform. And so all they care about is the method, and they're showing people how to do stuff on YouTube. So I have students coming to me who sometimes, they're trying to learn the art of magic, and I want to establish a solid foundation. So yes, there are certain classic things you want to learn before you just sort of dive into it.
I would assume being a people person is very important.
It is, but you know what? Even if they're not, I have most of my students are adults actually, but I do have some younger students, and generally they're not adults, so they haven't really developed a lot of their social skills maybe quite as well. So I kind of teach them how to stand in front of people. I teach them the importance of eye contact. Basically, I teach them everything that's really, it has nothing to do with, the magic tricks themselves. The first lesson, I'll give them, my presentation is all about, literally a presentation on the television, is all about giving them kind of an overview crash course of magic, giving them the classifications of what the different magic tricks are. But the most important thing I stress to them during that first lesson, and during actually the first few lessons, is that presentation is the most important, personality is the most important, psychological misdirection is important, misdirecting someone, manipulating the mind instead of manipulating, an object. It's more important than anything. So I'm not really looking for any skills in particular, because not everyone has the same skill set. Some people catch on to the tricks faster than others. Some people amaze me. They catch on to the sleight of hand, but they have kind of, by nature, dry personalities. So I try to work with their personalities to inject what they already have into their magic. And I work with them in terms of, having them maybe raise the volume of their voice, maybe, don't talk like this while you're doing a trick in a really boring way. I try to get them to, fluctuate their voice a little. I teach them these skills, children or adults, and that keeps people interested. I also teach them it's not just about the tricks, it's about the audience. You want to interact with the audience. And so when the audience is interested in what you're doing, they like you. So even if the magic trick is, not as doesn't get as good of a response as you wanted it to get, they still like you as a performer. And so I know some of this is kind of redundant based on what we've talked about, but I can't emphasize that enough.
So okay, let's move the conversation on to Houdini, because this show goes so fast, and there's a lot. Actually, you know what? Before we do that, I'm sorry, Tom. We do have a caller that wanted to comment on some of the things we've been talking about. This is Marianne from Buffalo. Marianne, welcome to Beyond Reality Radio. Great to have you on the show.
Thank you. I just wanted to say, many years ago, when I was in my early 20s, I was a fill-in for a girl on a carnival sideshow, and I was Sabrina the Rubber Woman. I did the blade box.
Did you say the
my
rubber?
Partner was
the
Wayne,
rubber woman?
And Wayne was a sword swallower. And yes, there was an oath. I remember I had to take an oath that I would never reveal any of the secrets to any of the performances. However, I will tell you, the sword swallower was definitely real.
Really? That's impressive. Marianne, thanks for sharing that story with us. And, there are some things you just can't fake, right, Tom?
Yeah, like the sword swallowing thing. I mean, I'd never try that myself. I've been intrigued to try it, but I have such an incredibly bad, what's that reflex they call it?
Gag reflex? The gag
Thank you, gag reflex. But you can see illustrations of how that's done, and it's just simply incredible. There's a lot of danger involved, but it's amazing that it is physically possible to do without trickery.
Now, I think Marianne said she was the rubber woman. Is that what she said? I couldn't get it.
The river woman, I think she said.
River woman?
I believe so.
Yeah, okay. Well, the funny thing is if she was the rubber woman, I've got a guitar that I bought very recently. It's the Rock and Roll Spook Show, and it's got all these sideshow characters on them. One of them is Bendy Wendy, and that just cracked me up. I thought maybe that Bendy Wendy was a real person somewhere around. If there's a rubber woman, it's kind of the same thing.
I think I dated her. Moving on.
I think we all wanted to. So let's talk about Houdini. And the first question I have for you, Tom, is we are all, any of us who've followed the life of Houdini, and particularly the death of Houdini, and his curiosity with the afterlife, know about the annual seances. And I think officially they were to end or whatever, but people still hold these seances on Halloween. Do you know, first of all, are you involved in any of those? And secondly, are you aware of any that have had any legitimate claims of being able to receive a message from Harry Houdini or contact him in some way?
First, no, I'm not directly involved in any of those seances. I was invited once to be around the circle a couple of years ago, and I couldn't make it, unfortunately. The official Houdini seance that they have once a year, but so I'm not officially involved. I did see a seance recently at a recent conference in Las Vegas, kind of like just a very casual one. But so I'm not directly involved, but it interests me just because. Because of the tradition, because of the history behind it. And, to answer the second part of your question, are you basically asking me if I believe in any, if there have ever been any materializations or contact with Houdini?
I know people claim to have done it, and I know that most of those claims have been proven to be hoaxes or, whatever. Have you ever heard of any or talked to anybody that claims to have had an experience where you felt like there might be something to it?
No. I mean, I've had people talk about experiences, like, for instance, in 1936, that was 10 years after Houdini died. Houdini's wife, Bess, I guess you guys are probably aware by now, she had a compact with Houdini that she would hold, that they had a secret code. So whoever died first would contact the other if it was possible. And Bess held a seance once per year for 10 years. And if at the end of that time Houdini did not make contact at the seance, then she'd basically give up. And that's exactly how it went. That was held on the rooftop of the Knickerbocker Hotel in Los Angeles. And so, more to your point, I guess, obviously there were no materializations, nothing happened. But, you hear people say, but mysteriously enough, Los Angeles, which is, sunny 99% of the time, and there were no storms in the weather records, there was a clap of thunder. I can't remember at a certain time. I don't remember the exact story, but I've heard it related several times that, they said, oh, maybe that was Houdini, or, and usually it's said in a humorous way. But I've talked to a few people who genuinely believe that that's what happened, was that that was Houdini's way of contacting them. And of course, you can say anything and hope someone believes you, but really it all comes down to one thing, and Houdini emphasized this as well. It all comes down to evidence. So far, there's no evidence of any manifestation.
I find it interesting that people will claim that maybe a clap of thunder somehow indicated he was responding. And here we are trying to contact somebody who doesn't have the energy to whisper or send a message, but could manipulate thunder.
I mean, he can somehow control the weather. Well, it's all part of confirmation bias. Because a lot of people who go to seances, they start from the viewpoint of believing. They have deep beliefs, so they tend to ignore information that doesn't really conform to their belief, but they take in more information that does conform to it, and so they're looking for stuff. So, I've heard that, at a seance, I don't remember where I heard this, but at one Houdini seance, someone said a book fell off the shelf. Maybe that was in the 1936 one, I'm not sure, but, they said a book fell off the shelf, and it must be a sign from Harry, and so they look for things to confirm their own beliefs. And so when the thing is, it would be really cool to hear from Houdini. Who wouldn't want to hear from Houdini? I mean, if that actually happened and they could somehow come up with scientific evidence to prove that Houdini made a showing, I mean, that would be wonderful, and especially magicians and Houdini geeks around the world would just be floored by that. But so far, yeah, there's not a shred of evidence, and I've never heard personally, of anything happening that I actually believe is real.
Well, I think that's the tough part, is so many people want to, especially if they want to believe, they're willing to take anything that happens as evidence of communication. And it doesn't help. It only hurts. A book falling or anything like that, because they're not willing to actually look and try to disprove it or truly figure out what it was. Exactly. And it doesn't help. It hurts. I mean, if he's able to knock a book off a shelf, I mean, why wouldn't he do something more obvious? Move something on the table in front of people, let them know.
Yeah, I mean, everything he did in life was huge. If he's, if there's some sort of a supernatural ability for him to come back to communicate with the living, you think he would do something more amazing than, to slide a book off a shelf. I mean, if I were him and I could do it, I'd raise the table, and it would smash the ceiling and the whole table would shatter. Hopefully no one would get hurt. But I mean, I would do something dramatic because I'm Houdini. I'm the showman. And so when you have these little things happen, it's really not that convincing.
We have about a minute before we have to go to break, but you kind of just said it right there. I mean, Harry Houdini, for as skilled and amazing as he was as an escape artist, a magician, he was really the ultimate showman, wasn't he?
Absolutely. Yeah, in fact, he had a quote. There's a great quote about showmanship, and he wrote it in The Unmasking of Robert Houdin. Robert Houdin was the father of modern magic. And he was a childhood hero of Houdini's, but Houdini wrote a book against him, and we don't have time to talk about why, but the quote is this: "The secret of showmanship consists not of what you really do, but what the mystery-loving public thinks you do. And that's my favorite quote of all time having to do with Houdini. And maybe after the break, we can talk a little more about that. I'm not sure how much time we now have.
Yeah, no, let's go to break, and we will pick up the conversation when we come back. A reminder, our telephone number is 844-687-7669. And don't forget, coming up in just a little bit, we're going to kind of open the phone lines for people to call and offer Christmas greetings to each other, a little, warm messages of Christmas fuzziness. How's that sound?
I think it sounds great.
Okay.
All right, you listen to Jason and JV. We'll be right back after this.
Hey gang, Scaricon might be over for this year, but there's another Scaricon in the works. You owe it to yourself to check out the details. Go to Scaricon.com. That's Scaricon.com. Sign up for the email list and be informed. You need to know what's going on with Scaricon because it's the best weekend of the year. Scaricon includes celebrities, fans, vendors, parties, panel discussions, film premieres, and so much more. It's a weekend you'll never forget, and everyone is welcome. Visit the website, Scaricon.com. That's Scaricon.com. Welcome back to Beyond Reality Radio. Jason Hawes, JV Johnson. Jay, this is our Friday, basically. After the show ends tonight.
It is Friday right now. Yeah,
it is. You're right. That's a good point. We're off for the weekend, and this is going to be a long weekend because of the holiday. And is it inappropriate at 2 a.m. to after the show's over to grab a drink and sit down and relax? I feel like. Should I get some eggnog and put a little rum in there? I don't know.
Actually, it's not inappropriate. It's actually promoted. I support it.
Oh, you do?
I support, and forget the eggnog. Just pour some rum in the damn cup and go with it.
Right. I'm glad you said that because I just have this hankering for a drink, man. I don't know. Maybe
is it because you see all the bottles of alcohol that are on the wall behind me?
Well, it is. You've got two really high-end bottles of vodka behind you, and I love those bottles.
Well, first, Dan Aykroyd does the whole crystal skull.
The crystal skull, right.
And Dan actually sent me one of the crystal skulls when they first came out, which autographed and everything else because we've been friends for a long time. And then another buddy of mine sent me another crystal skull with the little shot glasses. And then Howie, our good friend, sent me alien head vodka.
That is
I didn't even know
cool.
they had it, which is a big alien head full of vodka, green.
Yep.
And and then I got all these
other. And you've got them right there over your shoulder. So every time I look at you, I see those bottles of vodka there, and I my mouth starts watering.
I haven't opened them. I've had them for years, and because I guess if I opened them, it'd show that I had a drinking issue.
That's true. All right, let's go back to our guest line and bring our guest for tonight in. It's Tom Interval. Tom, we've been talking about Houdini. We've been talking about your career. I'm curious about your impression of Houdini's impact, not just on magicians per se, but really on anybody who is a performer from the point when he was doing his thing, and more importantly, a promoter from when he was doing his thing to now, because the impact is pretty significant.
Well, may I elaborate a little bit on that quote I said at the beginning before the break?
Absolutely.
Because it's such an important point, and this kind of goes into what you're asking me too. So just to reiterate, the secret of showmanship consists not of what you really do, but what the mystery-loving public thinks you do. Now, I teach my students that. During the first lesson, I read them that quote because it applies to magic. To me, most people that I've heard talk about Houdini have never brought up that quote, and to me it's a key to at least trying to understand Houdini's psyche and his secret. To me, that's one of Houdini's biggest secrets, and it's revealed right there in that book written in 1908. And he lived his life according to that assertion, where whatever the mystery-loving public thinks you do is more important. He lived by that assertion. He was an expert at creating the illusion of the great Houdini, basically. The person he wanted people to see. He was, he often called himself the king of handcuffs. And early in his career, he called himself the king of cards. And, he was the king of creating his own image, is how I see it. Everything from the date and place of his birth, which he didn't tell the truth about because he wanted to make a certain impression, to the perceived danger and impossibility of the feats he did as an escape artist. And, to the respect he wanted to receive as an author and a scholar. And, he wanted to be perceived as number one at everything he did. He even said this himself in at least one interview. He's talking about, he vehemently wanted to be first. And, if he couldn't, there would be no joy in life. And those are his words, no joy in life. So, he strived to be number one. So I guess my point is this. After all these years of studying magic and studying magic history and magicians, the one thing I've learned about Harry Houdini is this. It's really hard to separate fact from fiction. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle referred to, quote, the riddle of Houdini. I believe it was a chapter title in one of his books. And, that's true to this day. Houdini's name lives to this day, and that's a quite incredible thing.
Oh, absolutely. To still be going on now, especially so long after he passed away, it's amazing.
He died 90 years ago, yeah.
It's amazing.
And I think it's pretty remarkable. We were talking about this before we brought you on. It's hard for us to envision in today's day and age with social media and 24-hour news channels and 300 channels on television and satellite radio and regular radio and, you name it, there's media coming at us from all directions. But in Houdini's day, he didn't have any electronic media to rely on. I mean, radio was in its infancy. He was involved in some silent films and some things along those lines. But really, his promotional efforts were basically him going out and creating headlines in newspapers in one way or another, and making crowds form around him on a street corner because he was doing things, and that's how he did it.
That's right, precisely, and that's a really, really important point, because he could draw crowds of 100,000 people. If you look online, you can easily find some photographs of the immense crowds, just a flood, a sea of hats, and mostly men, out in the sidewalks. They're peeking out the window, watching him escape as he's hanging upside down 100 feet above street level from a straitjacket, wriggling out of this thing like he's. I heard someone describe his straitjacket escape like he's this. It's like a contracting muscle, and you can see videos of this on YouTube as well. It's incredible to see this. But, to your point about his publicity, he was a genius. He was a genius marketer and publicity guy. He did those stunts. He did those outdoor stunts to attract people to the shows that he was doing in those cities. And, amazingly enough, most of the time there were more people in the street watching him do that than there actually were in the theater. So, you raise a very, very good point, a very important one as well.
So what do we take from Houdini's quote-unquote death-defying escapes? In fact, we often hear about the fact that he was chained, straitjacket, chained up, thrown in a chest that was locked, thrown into a river. He basically had, 3-4 minutes to escape, and people would be, the clock would be ticking, and people would be, fearful that he was drowning because he hadn't emerged yet. How much of that was theater, and how much it was just really took him that amount of time to get out of those traps?
Well, without revealing too much, I'd say it's like 90% theater, and it's all about showmanship with him. That's why I love to read that quote, because it's all about showmanship. Houdini planned everything he did. Now, that's not to say there wasn't danger involved. I mean, for instance, his milk can escape. It's this milk can where he's submerged underwater, so obviously there's going to be some danger. I don't want to give away the secret of the milk can because people still use it today, but it's not escape tricks aren't always as dangerous as they appear to be. There's definitely elements of danger, but Houdini's escapes were so well thought out, so well planned, that they weren't as dangerous as they could have been, because there have been escape artists who have died. You can go to Google News and search, and you'll see, there have been escape artists who weren't as good at planning things. So the thing is, he would do the publicity, he would escape from a straitjacket outside, he would escape from jail cells in the local cities where he was performing. He would draw these immense crowds, and he did it all based on danger, on death. And I think that's one of the main reasons why his name is so well known today. It's not that people went to his performances and wanted to see him die, but they went to see a man who possibly might die. And there's a difference. This day and age, as you were saying, like a lot of the media, people's attention span is not the same as it used to be. But they used to go to the theater, and, sometimes they'd wait an hour as Houdini's escaping. And, sometimes it didn't take him that long. Sometimes he was out in 5 minutes. Sometimes he was out in 45 seconds, and he sat waiting to build that suspense as the clock ticked. And today, you couldn't really get away with that in certain respects, because, people might be a little more sophisticated these days, and they're used to seeing all kinds of stuff on YouTube. They're desensitized to this stuff. But back in the day, make no mistake about it, people thought he was going to die at each one of his performances where he did something that people perceived as dangerous.
Oh,
and again,
absolutely.
was an element of dangerous. But, to answer your question, 90% theater, I'd say.
Well, and most people, of course, were showing up in expectations of failure to this escape, which, of course, would lead to death resulting.
Yep.
So, and it's morbid to think about, and still, a lot of times that's still why people will go to some of these things, is because, he's probably going to screw it up, and let's go check it out.
Yeah, and that's why he always outdid himself, too. And by the way, you're probably aware of this, but Houdini had a lot of imitators. Not too long after he introduced his water torture cell, that's where he's hanging upside down in this huge vertical tank that you can see him from the front because it has a glass front. They lock his feet into stocks, they hoist him up, they immerse him in this tank of water, and they close the lid, lock it, and and then he obviously escapes, which is incredible. But the point is that he had a lot of imitators, and there was this woman, I don't know how to pronounce her name, it's Udina, which even sounded like his name, and she was doing it, I'd say, within a month or two, if I'm remembering that correctly. So we had a lot of imitators who really took a lot of chances. I mean, the water torture cell truly is dangerous. In fact, he proved it because, in 1926, not too long before he died, actually, he broke his ankle because I guess the cords that were pulling him up I don't know if they got tangled or twisted, but the stuff he did, there was definitely dangerous elements to it, and his imitators were, I think, fools for trying some of the stuff. Yeah. And I think at least one person died by trying to replicate a bridge jump in which Houdini was handcuffed and he would jump into the water. And I'm pretty sure, again, I have to check my records here, but I think that at least one imitator died doing it.
Tom, we have about a minute before we have to let you go here. I wanted to give you an opportunity to let people know what your website is, where they can get more information about the work you do, maybe some of your appearances and what you've got going on.
Oh, thank you so much. My two main things are I perform magic and I teach magic. And my website is intervalmagic.com, just like the word interval. And that's my magic website. If you want to contact me, to ask me questions about magic or lessons or anything like that, I'd love to hear from you. And if you're interested in visiting my Houdini websites, my HoudiniMuseum.org is not, I'm still updating it. I don't have a lot of time these days. But you can go to my blog on WordPress. It's HoudiniMuseum.wordpress.com. And you can follow me on Facebook and Twitter. I'm one of the easiest magicians to find. So.
Well, thanks so much for coming on and hanging out with us right before the holidays.
Thank you, guys. That was so fun talking to you.
Well, you have a great holiday, Merry Christmas, and just the best. Look forward to talking to you again.
Same to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tom Interval. We appreciate him being on the show. We're going to take a break. When we come back, the telephone number is 844-687-7669, and we're going to treat you to a little bit of our Christmas stuff, the stuff that Jay and I have put together to hopefully laugh and entertain folks here.
It's not put together to sound professional. It's put together to have some fun.
Yeah, so that's exactly what it is.
All right, you listen to Jason and JV Beyond Reality Radio. We'll be right back after this.
Hey gang, it's JV from Beyond Reality Radio, reminding you that TAPS Paramagazine is the official publication of the TAPS organization. That's right, if you're interested in the paranormal, you need to subscribe to TAPS Paramagazine, and now is your chance to do it at a special rate. And the best news is that TAPS Paramagazine has been completely redesigned and relaunched to serve you better. That's right, go to the website, it's tapsparamag.com, that's tapsparamag.com, click on the subscribe now button, enter the promo code BEYOND at checkout, and save even more on your subscription. It's TAPS Paramagazine, where every issue is filled with the latest information regarding the paranormal community, whether it's TV, whether it's radio, or whether it's happening in your neighborhood. It's TAPS Paramagazine. Again, go to the website, tapsparamag.com. That's tapsparamag.com. Use the promo code BEYOND to save. Nothing like a holly jolly Christmas, Jay. You know that.
Not just a jolly, but a holly jolly.
Holly jolly. It's the best kind. Of all the kinds of Christmases, that's the best one. Let's go right to the phone lines and bring Vince in. Good friend of the show. Vince, welcome to the show. Glad to have you on Beyond Reality Radio.
Hey, thanks a lot, guys. No jokes tonight, no questions. I just want to give a shout-out to you guys and say Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. And there's so many people in the chat room that I love. I found this chat room about 2 months ago. I've been hooked on it ever since. And I just want everybody to have a safe, happy Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And I'm proud to be a part of the family.
Oh, much love, man. Thank you very much for calling in, and happy holidays and a Merry Christmas to you as well. And we're happy to have you as part of the family.
Yes, thank you, Vince. And he's absolutely right. The when you discover the chat room, you realize what a great group of people in the chat. And they all care about each other. They all help each other out, and they have a little fun while they do it. So, Merry Christmas, Vince. Great to hear from you. Love the phone call. Thank you very much. Our phone number is 844-687-7669. Let's see, how much time do we have? We've got about 7 minutes, don't we?
About 7 minutes, yeah.
All right, well, why don't we do this? If anybody wants to get on, give us a call. We do have some open lines here, and let's go ahead and replay our little Christmas greeting for the night and let folks hear that again before the show ends.
All right, let's do it.
'Twas 3 nights.
There
all right,
you go.
let's hold on before we do that. Hang on, I just got to stop one thing and start the other. Live radio, so much fun. Anyway, okay, so all right, now we're ready. Let's roll this baby. 'Twas 3 nights before Christmas when all through the show the mood was quite strange. Why, we don't know. The guest was on target without any prattle, and people were listening from Boston to Seattle.
The talk was all light, but we did have some fear.
What would we find under the tree this year? Did you behave? I asked Jason with glee.
As much as you did, my good friend JV. At first we were chatting without much concern, until we had the first vision of many more we would learn. The visitor was clad in a fancy robe and hat, and some might see he was a tiny bit fat.
He said he was here to offer some aid, and with great elan some warnings he made. He said, hold on tight, this might get rocky. And then he offered his name. He said,
I'm Focky. I've had 3 visions that I needed to share. The first is that Jason will never grow hair. The second is more serious, and it may sound dumb, but JV will always have use of his thumb. The third is a message of great import. It's not the kind of info that you should retort. My visions have told me that soon you will find 2 more visitors of the spiritual kind.
And with that pronouncement, this Focky did leave, and Jason and I were grateful for the reprieve. But just when it seemed things would be quiet, another visitor appeared and created a riot.
This man was crude and had an odor of booze, and in between words, he often did snooze.
Yeah, my name is Duncan, and I've been charged with a task. I just needed to make sure I still have my flask. The words I will say may seem a bit rough. Yeah, but I'm hoping that you both can be tough. Well, the greatest gift you can find this season is right in front of you. With this, you can reason.
Then out of his mouth, as out the door he strode, he said,
Don't light a match near me, for I will surely explode.
That left us wondering, both scratching our head. What was this gift referenced in the words he had said?
And before we could blink, another vision we saw. This one was friendly, but not very tall.
You know me as Eddie. Slick to be precise.
And my name is Alex. You both have been nice. Your gift is amazing, beautiful, and glistening.
It's the gift of the love of everyone who is listening.
And with those words, we both sure did realize that we were indeed receiving a prize.
For it's all of you out there who tune in each night
that make it all worthwhile, rewarding, and right.
So to each and every one of our listeners directly from us,
we wish the most happy of seasons
and a Merry, Merry Christmas.
Just gotta say,
JV, you whine too much.
It's just not my day.
JV, you whine too much.
I just burned my thumb.
Need to stop your whining now. I'll give the gauze and healing salve.
Talk about a hot potato.
Remember on the radio,
I just wanted a bite to eat.
need to be careful with heat.
I guess I should learn my lesson.
Hot plates you shouldn't be messing.
Maybe just a sandwich instead.
Careful not to heat up the bread.
Need a stiff drink.
JV, you shouldn't pout.
I just need to think.
Sure, you're fine, no doubt.
I wish I knew how.
You crying right now.
Stop the pain.
I'll never look at you the same.
I have to get on with the show.
Stick your hand in the snow.
I think I'm over it now.
Man, I thought you were gonna have a cow.
Gonna be fine.
Finally, JV, you whine too damn much. I've got something to say.
Jason, you talk too much.
Get out of my way.
Jason, you talk too much.
My message is clear.
Now there's something to fear.
The words to
I'll
come
get the
out
button
lips.
ready with the blips.
Some words may not come out
Pronunciation is a terrible plight.
right. My tongue may get all
I
tied.
have to give you credit, you tried.
I think you'll understand.
Mind if I give you a hand?
Perhaps I should listen some more.
I may just laugh and fall on the floor.
Got a question to ask.
Jason, you talk too much.
Our guests will not pass.
I'm just saying it's way too much.
Our listeners will know
Just let the hot
just
air
what
blow.
I need.
I'm sure the message will soon be seen.
Maybe I'll get a little
If you
twisted.
stopped, it would be
Hell,
misted.
I'm not
You make
Merriam-Webster.
it more like Uncle Fester.
To say,
Just let it all flow out.
JV, you
talk too much. So we just want to wish all of our listeners and our friends and really our Beyond Reality Radio family a great big giant Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and we'll have a chance to say Happy New Year again next week, but Merry Christmas everybody.
Absolutely. And I'll be honest, without you the show wouldn't be here, and it's because of you all and your support and you standing with us. That's really made it a success, and we greatly appreciate that. And we look forward to airing on tons more stations starting next year. We want to give a big shout out to Tom Interval for coming on tonight and talking to us. But seriously, season's greetings, happy holidays, and a Merry Christmas to every single person out there. You enjoy your weekend, and we'll catch you next week. It's Jason and JV, Beyond Reality Radio.
Beyond Reality Radio is produced by Slick Eddie Edwards and co-produced by Alexandria Johnson for Entercom Radio. Don't forget to stop by our Facebook page, give us a like, and say hello. It's Beyond Reality Radio, all one word. If you've got information you want us to follow up on, or you'd like to be a guest on Beyond Reality Radio, email to Slick Eddie, that's Slick Eddie, EDDY, at beyondrealityradio.com. Thanks for listening.